Does anybody know what differentiates a contract implied in law, which is also known as a quasi-contract, versus a contract implied in fact? But what makes it implied in fact? Because it could be, I could look at it as it's customary. That's implied in law. That by the statutes under which the restaurant was established, because it was established under the laws of California. Laws of California have certain guidelines for commerce in the public waterways. So here we are. We could look at it as implied in law. But what would make it implied in fact would be your actions and your conduct. So, is the action of me just walking into a restaurant create an obligation for me to give up any money? No. But the conduct, my conduct of sitting down at the table, picking up the menu, ordering from the waitress, does create an implied in fact contract. The fact being established by my conduct and actions. It's interesting is, let's see. There's a gentleman I'm working with, and he got terminated, or they're attempting to terminate him, by a very large multinational corporation. And he put in a conditional acceptance to his termination papers. And they came back with a response. Now, of course, it wasn't in the form of an affidavit. But they made the claim that we have a terminate at will or a hire at will contract with you. Now, keep in mind there actually is no expressed employment contract. And they actually make this claim as well. There's no contract. What contract are you talking about? And his conditional acceptance was, okay, I accept your termination based on you paying me my salary for the next 9 years, or paying me a lump sum for my salary for the next 9 years, because I was planning on retiring in 9 years. Okay? And they come back, oh, no, you don't have that right because, this is an at-will employment. Now, interesting enough, he picks up a piece of paper out of the legal dictionary about at-will employment. Says right on it that at-will employment is null and void if there was not a contract in place which gave a determinate amount of time when the contract would end, and if job security was implied. In this particular multinational corporation, for the last 30 years that he's worked there, has always been about loyalty. And how loyalty to their employees creates loyalty of the employees to the employer. And how this is the nature of their success. Anyone smell implied in fact? So, he comes back with a conditional acceptance. I accept that this was an at-will contract, conditioned upon proof of claim that an implied in fact contract was not made by your promises of job security over the last 30 years, and your confession that there wasn't an employment contract which limited the amount of time. And he actually listed like 16 more points for them to rebut. So, they're either going to go the hard way or they're going to go the easy way. You can either go out the window or you can take the stairs. You're going to take the stairs. Nobody. Nobody signed it, but it's okay. We had someone to respond to. We just went straight to the CEO. Yes. We just went straight to the CEO because, somebody's got to be held liable for this. But it was funny that it was signed by no one, because ain't no one going to make those claims that this was an at-will contract when the implied contract over the last 30 years was contrary to that position. But anyone else would have just taken that as, oh, man, they got me, right? And all it took was for him to literally get the definition of at-will. employment. And it gave him his remedy right there in the definition of at-will employment. Oh, do you? It's actually a very powerful process. And in fact, he's walking with either the easy way. If this multinational corporation takes the easy way, he's walking with like 750 grand. If they take the hard way, he's walking with 7.5 million. But either way, he's already step one into his commercial lien with them by putting forward this affidavit, giving them the opportunity to prove their claims. Oh, really? At will? And how did you determine that? Oh, and put it in an affidavit. You got 10 days. Mr. CEO, since whoever responded to my last conditional acceptance had no name or identity, so we just go straight to the top. So the CEO, who's a representative of the multinational corporation, he has literally power of attorney for that corporation. So now we're going to have, at step 2 of this commercial lien, they're going to be given the option that in 10 days they're going to give up the $750 million or $750,000, or if they default after these 10 days, they're going to be liable for $7.5 million. And this is all based on, all of his points are all referencing an implied in fact contract and establishing all the elements of contract necessary for the existence of that implied in fact contract. Illustrating and demonstrating the meeting of the minds, illustrating and demonstrating the consideration, illustrating and demonstrating intent, all the elements necessary for a contract he's established. And negative averment, giving them the opportunity. Now this is going to literally, that's going to turn into his affidavit of truth, which is the evidence supporting his affidavit of obligation. If they can't respond with an affidavit, they're agreeing with all those points. And of course, a couple of the points on there are, the consideration, reasonable consideration for this breach. What does breach of contract create? A lien right. So reasonable consideration for this breach in the implied in fact contract is $750,000. That's when I was planning on retiring. 9 years. So you're either going to pick choice A, which is keep paying me my salary for the next 9 years and my benefits and everything else, or pay me a lump sum up front for the next 9 years of salary, or wait 10 days after you get this affidavit of obligation and I'm going to liquidate a $7.5 million claim against your corporation and your personal public hazard bond. Okay? And trust me, this company has the $7.5 million. So that's all based on the principles and the understanding of the principles of contract. By simply going through books of maxims of contract and law and definitions, he was able to determine and establish the implied in fact contract. All his facts came from simple contract principles. He didn't have to be an expert in law. He didn't quote one law or code. Not one code section. Not one law. He didn't need it. Because he had all the elements of the agreement, all the elements of the contract were present. And all he had to do was put it forward in negative averment and allow them to rebut it. Are they going to be able to come forward and say, we never promised you job security? Not in the form of an affidavit.